So next thing we're going to talk about is what's called shares, computer shares. So what's all that about? It's giving, what that does is give permissions to workstations or other computers to access your stuff. So we just did all this stuff on Data 1. And if I logged in to Data 1, you can access your stuff. And you've seen that happen already. So let's try accessing it from our client. So here's, I don't remember even who Max is. Oh, that's right, some of our canines or whatever. But we have Alexis. That's, I guess, a feline. We're going to log in as Alexis. So being the HR manager, she should be able to get into the HR manager folder, the HR folder, the shared managers folder, the policies folder, all kinds of stuff. So if I take a look at this, and I want to try to access that, I'll click on the network and see what I can find out there. And it says network discovery is turned off. So if you turn this on earlier, like when you create the virtual machine, it'll be on already. If not, you can turn it on now. This just simplifies things later on, so I will turn it on. And I'm not sure why it's saying sign out. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. That was for the VMware update, not for the network discovery. So we'll try that again. Go to network discovery, turn it on, and now it's going to turn on. As you notice, it says that you need administrative access to do that. Users just can't turn on network discovery. So you have to do this. Now this is your virtual machine, not your desktop. This is not the /student. This is in fact administrator on the GOPA domain. It's a lot of work just to turn on network discovery. And it's going to turn it on. We really don't need to have network discovery on, though. It just makes them simpler later on. So when I start clicking around, it'll just come up automatically. But I can access a networks by basically accessing it by the // and then like your server name. If I try to access it, though, it says there's nothing there. It's just like, what do you mean there's nothing there? I'm looking at my data server, and this is, look at all these folders over here. And I'm Alexis, so I should have access to all this stuff. Where is it? And that's where we get into the concept of shares. Shares are an interesting, I don't know, system in that it kind of works like a Windows firewall. So it's going to allow or deny traffic. And without a share, nothing gets through. You actually have to create shares or pathways to your server or to your files to be able to even have any access to them remotely like we're trying to do. So over here is my server. And on my server, I have a D drive. And on a G drive, I have, well, here's an HR folder with an access control list of, you know, who can access what. And I have other folders on here as well. The share, unless you create a share, is, like I said, it's kind of like a firewall in that here's my Windows computer over here. I'm trying to access that and I can't. There's just no opening for it. So another example I use is kind of like a window, like how big of a window are you going to open it? And we have 3 settings for the windows. We have a window setting that's really small. What? Erase. There we go. It's pretty small, and it's the read permission. And if you think of like firewalls, or if you think of, you know, opening an access to something, that's the limiting factor. So even if you had like full access to something, like over here you have, you know, read write access to something, as I go through the share, all that is allowed to go back and forth is the read permission. And so that's one way of dealing with security. Is it's like, oh, I want people to access it locally and give them read-write, but remotely I want them to have read-only. That's just really weird. Just don't do it that way. So we're not, it's an option, but we're just not going to do it that way. Another option, in fact, I'll put it down here. Another option is, so I can make it consistent. It's called change. And we sort of think of that as read-write. Now, when somebody accesses through this share, they would have read-write rights. And in this case, you do have read-write rights, so everything's wonderful. So it's open and big, just big enough for me to access the read-write permission, and it goes back and forth. When I get to the other side, and in fact gives me read-write permissions. So I have the NTFS permissions and the share permissions that way. Our last way of dealing with that is the biggest one, and that is the full control, which is equivalent to the NTFS permission of full control. It means you can do everything. Now, just like a firewall, just because they open up a port doesn't mean that you have to use it or that you get that permission. So if I'm coming in through here, this one, and I'm getting read-write permissions in NTFS file system, that's all that I get. I don't get the full control permission to the file system. It's just saying I'm allowed to go through here. Think of it as if I was the admin over here. If I was the administrator and I came through this, I'm able to delete files, create files, or whatever, but I wouldn't be able to manage them. I wouldn't be able to work with permissions. I wouldn't be able to work with security. I wouldn't be able to work with anything on them. So it's kind of the limiting factor there. Just realize that they're all there and understand of how they work together. Whatever is the lowest available permission is what it's going to be. Let me go down this access control list, and I'll just make up an example. Here's a specific user who has read-only rights. If I still come in through the full control permission window, I still only get read-only permissions. I don't gain anything by going through a bigger window. It just gives you a bigger path to work with that. Now, in the world of firewalls, we like to have firewalls as small and as narrow as possible, only let just enough to get through to make things very secure. You can do the same thing here, like what are the rights supposed to be, the permissions supposed to be. Let me make it just that size. Microsoft has actually come up and officially stated that their best practices suggestion is to make all shares full control. Basically, open it up to everyone. Which at that point is like, why even have shares? Why am I creating these and doing all this extra work and pointing them there? It is just a lot of extra work. But it's there, it's been there for years, and there is some background to it, but it seems like we're doing stuff redundant. We have to build the file system, and then we have to build almost a parallel share system to go along with it, only to give everybody access through the share and on and on. But that's how the shares work. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to go through some examples just to give the practice of creating shares. There's two main ways of creating shares. And then we're going to end up getting rid of all of it and then simplify it all into one way, one share. Now, doing one share doesn't give you any access or any chance to really practice and to redo these things. So that's why we're doing it multiple different times in different ways. Is to give the practice of working with it, but just letting you know we're going to end up with just one share at the end. So showing you how to create shares. I'm going to work with my file system on my Data 1 server, and I'm just going to start with my accounting folder. Well, you know what? Alexis is part of HR, so I'm going to start with HR. So if I go to my HR folder, and I go to Properties, right next to Security is Sharing. And so this is one way of doing it. So if you've shared at home, this is probably how you've shared. You click on the folder and you say, I want to share this folder. You have two different ways of sharing on here. And this is to even add to the complexity. These are basic shares. If you're in PC Support 2 at all, they really concentrate on this kind of shares. Networking, we just never use these shares at all. Well, I never use them. I have always used advanced sharing, even when I'm doing just very, very basic, simple things. So advanced sharing is underneath here. I like it. It's kind of straightforward, very clear. I click on it, and you get a button, Share This Folder. That's pretty straightforward, right? It defaults to a share name. Now the share name, let me just, again, flip back over here. Each of these shares over here get their own name. You can name them anything you want. That's just the path of getting through there. By default, it is the name of the path that you're sharing. So in this case, it's the HR folder. You can limit the number of people that are connected to you simultaneously. Maybe you have a network load issue and you don't want 17,000 people connected to you at the same time. You could limit it to like, 10,000 if 17,000 is just too much. Maybe you want to make it secure and only allow one person to connect at a time, or I don't know, whatever. Then we have permissions, and this is the tricky part. This is not the NTFS permissions on the HR folder. And this is so confusing. Many people get this confused, and rightly so, because you're saying permissions to the HR. No, it's permissions to the share. Permissions, then, everyone has read-write. So by default, if you didn't do anything, you're saying like share the folder, click OK. People see the file, and that's all that they can do. They can open the document, but that's all they can do. They can't modify the contents of it. They can't create new ones or whatever. And you'd be like, look, it's like, what's wrong with this? It has to do with the share permissions. We want to open up that window and give them full control to everyone. And again, these are best practices as according to Microsoft, that we allow full control to everyone on there. And then we click OK. And that's it. That's all that's to creating a share. Flipping over to my Windows 10 user now, under Data, let me just refresh. I now have a share showing up. And this is the HR share. And that's pointing to, shares always point to a specific folder. So this share is pointing to the HR folder. And there's my HR folder. So I can go over here and I can make new files and folders. And let me make one called personnel. That's in the regular HR folder. I have access to the HR manager folder. I might have employee reviews underneath here because this would be more secure. Reviews. How do you spell reviews? There we go. Reviews. So everything looks good that way. Okay. Let me switch over to another share. So taking a look at, let's do accounting. We'll do accounting. Go to properties, do sharing, advanced sharing, and again, it's just share the folder. It defaults to accounting. I click on permissions and I give them full control to this. Now I click back over here, and now I refresh, and now I see two shares on here. But I'm Alexis in HR. I can still see the share, but I can't access it. It's saying you don't have any rights to the accounting folder. Why are you trying to access this at all? And you just can't. So it tells you that you can't do it. If I logged in as an accounting person, let me find an accounting person. Let's log in as Andrew. Actually, I'm going to log in as Daniel. So I'm going to switch users here. So I'm going to sign out. I'm going to log in as another user called Daniel. And after I log in, I can do the same thing. You don't have to do that network discovery thing once. It's per machine. So if I click on network, I should see my data 1 server. And then underneath data 1 server, I can see accounting and HR underneath here as well. Let me show you a different thing as well. So let me just click back on network. You can access it through, browsing and, double-clicking based on network discovery. You can also directly go to a share using what's called a UNC. A UNC is a naming convention, universal naming convention, that's standard across all operating systems. This is not a Windows specific thing. It's / the server name. In this case, it's data1 is our actual server name, which, by the way, if you don't have your file server actually named data1, let me go back over to Data 1 and go to Server Manager and do Configure the Server. If it doesn't say Data 1 here, you're not going to connect to it. because it's going to be whatever this name is on here. So if it's called Win39G6493, that is going to be your server name when you're trying to connect. Anyway, it's / server name / share name. And I have two shares. One's called HR, the other one's called accounting. And it takes me to that share. So it's / server / share name. I have this matching right now. Accounting share maps to the accounting folder, but it could be something completely different. It could be called, Larry. The share named Larry goes to the accounting folder. It'd be really confusing for people to find stuff, but that's where it is. Now I am Daniel. Oh, I didn't do this one. I never finished this. Daniel shouldn't have it. Oh, no, that's right. I can still see it. I didn't fix this yet. Windows can't access. So I can see the folder for manager, but I can't access it. That's perfect. Budgets, I can get into it. I should be able to do anything I want underneath budgets because that's just part of accounting. I am part of payables, so I should be able to work in payables. And I can, but I shouldn't be able to do anything in receivables, and I can't. That's exactly what I'm expecting to have. That's pretty confusing, though, seeing folders that you don't have access to. We can get rid of those. We can get rid of those things. And we do that by doing a different route. Normally, we're working with the file system and then right-clicking, going to Properties Sharing. If we want to work with it so that we can not have these things show up that they don't have access to, we need to use Server Manager. So clicking back over on Data 1, I need to be in Server Manager. And I want to click on File, Storage, and Services over on the left-hand side. When I do that, on the left-hand side, I also have a Shares link. And this is where I'm really concentrating. So Shares. And you can see my two shares. I actually have two shares created already. These are ones I created. One's called Accounting, one's called HR. What I want to do is, I'll end up doing this for all of them, but I'm just going to do it for accounting right now because that's who I'm logged in as, is I want to enable something called access-based enumeration. A big, long, fancy term, which just means if you don't have access to it, you don't see it. And if I don't have access to the accounting manager folder, I shouldn't see it. I don't want to see it. If I don't have access to receivables, I don't want to see it. It's going to confuse me and make me want to click on it only to get the little message that's saying, sorry, you don't have access to it. So to do that, I right-click on the share that I'm working with, and I can go to Properties. So I'm going to Properties of the share. And then I click on Settings. So let me go back again. So I see the shares. I right-click on the share that I want to work with. Go to Properties. And then click on Settings. And here's the enabled access-based enumeration. Why this isn't on by default, no idea. But you have to enable it. I think it should just be there automatically. I shouldn't have to think about it, but I do. Once I enable that, let's switch back over to my Windows 10, refresh the screen, and oh, you know what? It takes a minute to do that. To save time, I'm just going to log out. It does get refreshed, but it's a whole lot faster just logging in and out. Because it just happens right away then, every time you log in. I go back to my network. I go to, oh, come on. Data 1. I go to Accounting. And now I only see the two folders that I have access to. I don't have access to the Manager folder, so you don't see it. I don't have access to the Payables folder, therefore I don't see it. So it makes it pretty easy. Well, let's just do this under HR as well. So I'm going to log in as HR, Properties, Settings, Enable Access-Based Enumeration, click OK. Okay, so I did that. I'm going to go over here. So sign out. I'll log in as Alexis. Alexis already logged in, so this should go pretty quick. Click on Data, HR, and I should see both of those folders. I go to Personnel, I go to HR Manager and Employee Reviews, and I should be able to access it that way. And I should be able to see everything. If I logged in as somebody that's not the HR Manager, this will take a second because I have to create a new profile. I'm going to log in as Emma, just a regular HR person. I go to the File Explorer, HR, and I don't see the HR Manager folder, but I can still see the other folder that was part of there. If you click on something and it says access denied, and it should have access to it, that you think, definitely go back to the file system and look at the NTFS permissions, which would be the HR properties security.
I have access to all that. I'm saying when I try to enable the access space.
Yeah, sorry, I misinterpreted that. So yes, on the data server, if you're working with Server Manager, make sure you're logged as administrator. Users can't do this. Let me show you another way of creating shares, though. So that's one way of creating shares, is right from the file system. This is probably what we're most familiar with. This is what I use most of the time. And then I go back and I just enable access-based enumeration. There is another way of doing it right from Server Manager. I find it more confusing just because the way it's laid out and the way they use terminology. But there are some advantages because it kind of takes you through that access-based enumerations and permissions right away. So let me just show this to you as well. So this is the second way you can create a share. So kind of going back, let's go all the way back here to the beginning. So in Server Manager, on the left-hand side, I want to go to File and Storage Services. And I'm going to go to Shares. And up here, I can go to Tasks. Go to Tasks, and I create a new share. So I'm on Shares, then I go to Tasks, New Share. And we're going to use an SMB, which is the protocol that Microsoft uses for all file sharing. And it's just a quick one. Suitable for general file sharing. So I click Next. And now it says, which server do you want to use? Now, if I had multiple servers, if I had, servers on here, I could actually put this on other servers as well. This is the part that I find confusing. This is like, oh, I want to, share my D drive or something like that. It just creates a folder called share under there, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a default location. It tells you that here specifically, the location of the file share will be a new folder in the shares directory on the selected volume. So it doesn't give you a whole lot of flexibility. We're going to want to choose a custom path, and we want to point to an existing folder. So we can browse for it if we want to. So I can click on the D drive and then we'll choose IS this time. We'll just choose IS. So I'm going to select the IS folder. So D:\IS. I could have just typed that in as well, but sometimes browsing is nice because you're not going to get a typo. Then click Next. It defaults, if the folder name is called IS, it defaults to the share name being IS. You could extend it or, whatever, make it different. You could call it IS share, shared IS files, whatever. And all the paths and everything are going to be here. Remember that UNC reference? It's right here as well. / data1 / IS. That's going to be the UNC path to it. So I don't change anything on here. It's just showing that to you. I click Next. And so what's nice is it gives me this option right while I'm creating it. So I don't have to create it and then come back and enable this. I have the ability to enable access-based enumeration right while I create it. So that is one advantage of it. I click Next. The next advantage is right here. Remember when we had to go in and click on the permissions button, which is easy to miss, and choose everyone has full control? The default for this is everyone has full control. And so Microsoft, when they have realized that we're going to automate this through a wizard, they're going to use their best practices and saying we're going to implement it this way already. Don't mess with this stuff. This is, in fact, the folder permissions as well. We do that separately. We want to manage that separately. Here's a good quick look, baby. Is this like, are these really the people I want to have access to this? IS users, yeah, okay. But I really want to customize from here. It's going to give you a different dialog box that you may not be familiar with, and it's really easy to get things wrong on it. So it's really nice that it gives full control to the share automatically, though, and allows me to do access-based enumeration right off the bat. And that's it. I go over to my Windows 10 machine, I click on Data 1, and now I have an IS folder. Share. I don't have access to the IS share, so it's going to tell me I don't. I'd have to log in as an IS person to do that. So what I want you to do is, on your data server, for each of your main departments, so accounting, executive, HR, IS, operations, sales, and do shared. So that's actually 7 of them. I want you to create a share for each of those folders. So probably name them those shares. You can do the right-click properties. Probably do half and half. Half of them with right-click properties, and then do the other half using the share wizard. Make sure that everyone has full control, and make sure that access-based enumeration is on. Once you do all that, log in and your Windows 10 machine as various people again. Log in as a bunch of different people. It's going to be a little bit more time consuming because every time you do that, it has to create a new profile on your Windows 10 computer, unfortunately. But that's the way you practice and that's the way you test. Go to the shared folder then. Go to the share and see what rights I have in the shared folder. Go to the IS, go to IT, and make sure that you have the right permissions, share permissions, as well as NTFS permissions based on that. So I'll give you probably about 15, 20 minutes to work on that. What I want to show you is that you need to be cautious about, it's called nesting shares. So let me just do this. So I'm going to make a new share. In fact, I'll do it this way. I'll go to tasks, new share. I'll use the wizard. Click next. And I want to do a custom path. And I want to just choose my D drive. Just my G drive. I want to share the entire G drive. And I'm going to call it, since it's not a name of a folder, I'm going to call it data. And that's going to be my share path. And I click next. Make sure I do access-based enumeration. And it does everyone full control for the share permission. And I click next. And I'm done. So now when I go over here to Windows 10, I go to data. And I have this accounting 1 folder, my data folder, right? If I click on data, since I have access-based enumeration on there, I only see the folders of access to, which are HR and shared. And it's kind of easy this way, kind of nice this way. So if I go to HR, it's like, oh, there's personnel folder and whatever. I go over to shared, and I can see the games, party ideas, policies, and recipes. Under policies, I can see the policy, but I shouldn't be able to change it. You want to save it? Yes, I want to save it, and it did save it. Oh, I'm on HR. I forgot who I was. That's right. I thought I was back at Daniel. So it did work. Did exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, what can get confusing, though, is say that I have this as a folder up here, and I open up another window, and I go to Network, and I go to Data 1, and I go to Accounting. Oh, HR. Sorry, I am in HR, and I have this really secret, secure HR file, not to be copied anywhere else. Okay, so there's my file, okay? And it's over here on this drive, this HR drive over there. And then meantime over here, it's just like I start like looking around, it's like, oh, that's my data HR, and I go to HR over here, and it's just like, oh, wait a second. That's a whole different place. This one says data 1 HR, data HR. That must be a different place. I'm going to delete this because it shouldn't be there. I need to keep this secure. So I go ahead and delete it. And it's just like, whew, Good, it's gone from there. But what happened?
You deleted the
I actually deleted the file. This is two different views from it. And here I'm using the paths, and it makes it a little bit more confusing. Let me see if I can just do this. This was taking a little bit longer this way, but let's see. Click on network. Hang on a second. What do I want to do here? Anyway, so I won't show you that way, but it can get confusing, especially if these are mapped to drive letters. And right now we're using share names. That's not common. We're going to take care of that in future weeks as well. This is going to be your G drive or your H drive, your K drive, your L drive. And that's especially when it's confusing when you see something on your G drive and your L drive, and that'll completely freak you out because those are two different drives. No, those are just two different letters pointing to two different shares, which are in fact going to the same folder. And so just be really careful with the mappings and drive letters because it's just going to confuse people. So let me show you how this all simplifies down. And that deals with this data drive. That's all we really need to give is this one data share. I don't need this accounting one. To get rid of it, you just click stop sharing. There's no delete or remove. You just say stop sharing. And that gets rid of it. There's an error. The resource does not exist. Because I renamed it. Okay, so I have to refresh this. And there we go. So HR, stop sharing, and it just goes away. Accounting 1, stop sharing, and it goes away. Let me show you from the other side. You can also stop sharing from the file system side. I know that I'm sharing IS. By the way, I like the older operating system a little better. Way earlier versions of Windows, when I was sharing a folder, it had a little hand under it. Does anyone remember those? A little, which was great. I know I'm sharing it. Here I have no idea that I'm sharing it. So you have to be careful. So I can go here, properties, sharing, advanced sharing, and I just uncheck it. So you can do it from the file system or from server manager. Either way, you just stop sharing and it just goes away. This is nice, this view over here though, because it just shows you all your current shares all in one spot without having to look at all the folders and icons. So having a simple data share pointing to the root of your D drive, giving everyone full control to the share, makes it really easy for the users. The users log in, they end up seeing one share to connect to. It's all of their stuff. In this case, it's HR and then shared. I'm going to log out and actually log in as Daniel, other user. Then you end up seeing all these weird shares out there of, folders that or shares that you don't have access to. It makes it really simple. If I click on network, go to data 1. I just see the one share, that's my data. Now because I'm part of accounting, HR disappears and accounting shows up. I'm not a manager, so I can't see the managers folder. I'm not in receivables, so I can't see that. I can get to the shared folder though. I can see the policies and whatever I want in there. So this is, by the way, how we do in the classroom. You end up having one share. So here is, data 1. This is how the classroom is set up. Whoa, that went really fast. So here's one data share. It's pointing to the root of your D drive. Everyone has full control to it. On the file system side, everything is controlled by NTFS permissions. This is the folder structure of the classroom server. Gordy, Mike, it's an adjunct instructor, myself, and then the students. If I go to the root of D, instructors have full access to the whole root of D, but the students don't, and users don't, so there's no read-only access. You come to the students folder, click on properties, look at security. Here's students. Students are able to read only to the students folder, so I can post things out there, but you can't do anything to them, delete them or whatever. Underneath students, though, there's a student uploads folder, which you can't take rights away from people, but you can add them. So in this case, without doing the inheritance thing, so you inherited the read rights, and in the student upload folder, you're added the modified and write rights. So that folder you can do anything you want with. You can upload things, delete things, it's whatever. It's a way of getting stuff to us or getting things on the server, and then we can put it in the proper place or whatever. So this is a common way of working with file system rights and file directory structures and shares, making it nice and simple. We're going to drive letters later on. You don't have to go to, for when you were accessing things, you didn't click on network, and then network discovery is turned off on my computer. But you can go / data1 / I'm on the wrong computer. Sorry. Let's close that. Let's go to my file manager here. If I click on network, see if it shows up. If not, it is actually the same thing, data1 / data, and this is the whole file system, and see what you have access to. That's your only share that's out there. We don't access it that way. We access it using an S drive, and we talk about mappings later on of how do we get an S drive mapped to there. That comes under group policies.